it's Christy. I'm so excited to be back with you on the Lawnfawn YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using the brand new Wild Wolves stamp set. So I have stamped those images out with Lawnfawn Jet Black ink on Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers. I'm going to start with my wolf couple, and I'm going to use some neutral grays for them. I decided to go with the neutrals because they're a nice combination between the warm and the cool grays, and so it just kind of lended itself to this nighttime scene. So I went with N0, N1, N3, and N5, using the darkest three shades on the majority of the body. So I'm starting with that N5 first to lay in a little bit of shadow here and there wherever I think it should go. And then I'm going to blend that out with the N3, just softening the edge of that N5 and pulling that darkest color into the mid-tone. And I'm going to do both of these at the same time since they're kind of one image and it's just quick and easy. I don't have to keep switching markers that way. So once I have that N3 laid in, I'm going to bring in the N1 to finish off the gray parts of these guys, just filling in any remaining white space that I want to be gray with that lightest shade. I'm also going to throw a little of that N1 into the insides of their ears. I'll add some pink to that later on, but having a little bit of that gray tone in there just kind of mutes it a bit. That makes it look a little bit more natural. So once I finish up the gray parts, I'm also going to continue with that N1 and add a tiny bit of shading to the edges of the white ruff and the lower part of the face, and then I'll blend that out with the N0 and leave the plain white cardstock to be my highlight. Then I'll move on to the two little baby wolves, which I just really love. I think they're super, super sweet. I have a little 4-year-old nephew named Wolf, so I absolutely see some birthday cards coming in my future for him. But anyway, I'm going to just color them exactly like the parents. Of course, wolves come in all different color combinations, so you can totally mix it up and change things around. But for this card, I decided to make them look just like their mom and dad. So I'm using the same darkest three shades on the gray parts of their body, and then the lightest two shades for the white parts of their body. So real quick and easy coloring on this one. I'm keeping it real simple for this nighttime scene. So I'm going to finish up the gray parts and then quickly add in that shading on the white. And then I'm going to add in some rosy cheeks and also color in the insides of the ears like I mentioned. I'll use RV10 and RV11 for that. Just a little touch of that first on the cheek and on the inside of the ear, and then I'll blend that out with the RV10 by just tracing around the outside edge of the RV11 on the cheeks and then blending up toward the top of the ear with that lighter shade. That just adds a little pop of pink on the card that's going to break up a lot of the monotone colors. Everything else is pretty much neutral in this scene, so I just wanted that little pop of pink. Then for the bird, which I'm going to color to be a raven, instead of going with some darker grays, I wanted to add in a bit of blue violet, but I'm using ones that are really gray leaning. They have a lot of gray tone mixed in. I went with BV20, BV23, BV25, and BV29. And I'll also use the same shades for the rock formations, which are really fun, really great scene setting elements. But I'm only going to use the darkest three shades on the rocks just to make them look a little bit deeper and richer. They're going to be, underneath the wolves, and so they would be cast in more shadow. They wouldn't be catching as much of that moonlight that will be shining in our scene. So I just went with the darkest three shades. And I'm coloring them in kind of roughly. I don't really worry about making them look too smooth because stones have all kinds of variations to them. They're not always perfectly smooth. They can be really rough and jagged and just have little, edges with darker places, so that's why I added a bit of that BV29 in the creases where the artist drawn lines are. And then I'm going to move on to my trees. And for my trees, I also decided to go with kind of some spookier shades. This isn't really a spooky scene, but it is a nighttime scene. So I just wanted things to be really desaturated. I didn't want any bright pops of color other than that tiny bit of pink on their cheeks and ears, like I mentioned already. So I'm using E71, E74, E77 and E79 for these trees. I really love the way that they are drawn. They look so rustic, and I think they would make really perfect spooky trees if you wanted to combine them with some Halloween cards or just some really nice fall cards. They really have a lot of character to them. So I'm starting with that E79, just adding a little bit here and there for some shading. On the larger tree, I also added a few little lines, again, just to create those grooves and creases in the tree bark. And then I'm blending that out with the E77, making sure that I save a lot of room for those lighter shades. I don't want to get too heavy-handed with the darker colors because I do want a little bit of that lighter highlight so that we do get the moonlight kind of reflecting a bit, especially because the moon kind of will be between the two trees. So I wanted to make sure that the front, most rounded part of the tree was lighter in tone. So I blended out the E77 with the E74, and then I'll come in with that lightest shade, the E71, and just fill in any remaining white space. And yeah, I really like how these E70s worked on those trees. I think it's a really different, kind of unique brown tone to use, but I really like them. So last but not least, we've got the moon, and I wanted to have a little bit of a glow to it. I didn't want to go too bright. Like I said, this is more of a desaturated scene, so I didn't want to use any bright yellows. I went with super pale tones using Y quadruple zero, Y triple zero, and then Y11. So the Y11 is the darkest. I'm going to put that on the right side of the moon, and then also on the right side of each of the little craters to give them a little bit of extra glow. And then I blended out with the Y000 and then the Y00. And then I added a little extra color to those craters with a second layer just to make them a little bit darker. And then I brought in Y13 for the raven's beak. And then I trimmed all of these images out with their matching dies. So my background is going to be pretty quick and easy using some pattern paper for my night sky. I'm going to take a sheet of this foiled pattern paper from the Spiffier Speckles 6x6 pad, the one that was just released. It's so beautiful. I absolutely love it. So I took this kind of blue-violet tone out, and I'm going to trim that down with the second largest of the outside-in stitch rectangle stackables. I also trimmed down a piece of narwhal and use the Simple Stitch Hillside borders for the top of that. I'm going to pop that in my MISTI and stamp my sentiment using some Storm Cloud ink. And I went with the one that says, "I'm glad you're in my pack," which I think is super, super sweet. I stamped that down twice to make sure it was nice and bold, and then I'll pop my card base in my MISTI as well so I can stamp on the inside of that. I am using Lawnfawn Fog cardstock for the card base and continuing to stamp in the Storm Cloud ink. And then I wanted to bring in another piece of pattern paper, this time from the Favorite Flannel 6x6. I adore plaids and flannels, so I thought this one was just so cozy and fun. I took out the navy blue print, and I'm going to trim that down with the largest of the large stitch rectangle stackables, and I just made sure to line that up in the center so that I have an even pattern all the way around. Then I'm going to glue that to the front of my card base using some liquid glue from the glue tube, lining that up to cover my A2 standard size card. So it's 4 1/4 wide by 5 1/2 tall. Then I'll take the foiled piece of pattern paper from the spiffier speckles, and I'm going to glue that to a piece of white cardstock that I trimmed out with that same die, just to make it a little bit more stable because I want to pop it up on the card front. I'm going to add the gray piece that is going to be my ground down at the bottom. And then I will add some foam tape to the back of that so that I can pop it up on my card base and add a bit of dimension. So I'm just going to line that up in the center of my card, making sure it's on there nice and straight. I just wanted to adjust that a tiny bit and then press that down into place, and I can bring in my images. So I usually like to start with the taller images or the larger images. So I'm going to take this big tree that I know that I want to have over on the left hand side, kind of taking up most of the top part of that scene. And then to the left of that, I want to have my moon. So I'm going to place that over on the right, and I wanted it to be tucked a tiny bit behind that tree. So I'm just going to adjust that until I have it how I want it. And then I'll take the smaller tree and add that below the moon on the right hand side. It's going to frame in that night sky really nicely. Then I'll take that large stone and I'm going to glue that down a little bit above the sentiment, leaving some room down in front. And then I'll take my wolf couple and add that to the top of the stone. I just love them so much. I'm so happy about these wolves. I think they're so adorable. Can't get enough of them. So I am going to take the two little babies next, and I'm going to place one over on the left hand side down in front right above that sentiment, and then I'll take the other small one and put that on the right side to balance him out. And then I've got that separate little stone that I'm going to place right between them just to add to the scene. And then finally I have my raven, which I will add to the tree. I'm just going to tuck his feet back behind the branch so it looks like he's standing on it. And then of course I wanted to add a bit of glitter to my moon and make it really shine. So I took a little Stardust Stickles and added that to the places where I had the darkest shading. And that is going to finish up this card. So I will lift that up so you can see how that foil really shines along with that stickles and give you another peek at the inside. I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. I had so much fun creating with this set. So if you did, you can leave me a comment down below. I love reading your feedback. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have an amazing day. Bye-bye.